and welcome to Who Dares Roles TV. I am your host, Mike B, and today I'm going to be comparing stuff. I'm going to be comparing Dunes, in fact. The Dune games. So I'm going to be comparing GF9's reprint of the 1970s Dune board game. Lovely jubbly, long out of print, now available from your local friendly board game store. And Direwolf's Dune Imperium. More recent edition came out tail end of 2020. Two different types of games, very different types of games. So before we dive into these beauties, number one, the mileage you'll get out of these games is probably kind of factored with how kind of engrossed you are into the Dune franchise. I say franchise, but I mean the Dune mythology. For instance, if you have read at least, the very least, is the first of the Dune novels by Frank Herbert. There was subsequently, I think he did 6, though, frankly, the quality factor, or how much you'll get out of that, it drops off quite drastically. At a push, you can get away with the first 3 books, and that does you. But even really, at a real push, this is pretty good place to start and pretty good place to finish. Anyway, Dune, Frank Herbert, 1960s, I think it was. It came out. It is influenced many fantasy and sci-fi and all sorts of genres have been influenced by what Dune did. Star Wars, Game of Thrones certainly is there, and it is a universe. If you've never delved a toe or dipped in any way into this, it is very much a sci-fi Game of Thrones type, very brutal, unforgiving universe and world, and lots of betrayal and backstab, and that War of the Roses, that sort of the gristle, that meat, the mayhem that gave Game of Thrones its zest for death, should we say. It's embroiled into Dune. The different warring families, the great houses, the Harkonnens are the bad guys, and the Atreides are the good guys, and it's played out of a bigger, broader canvas of this rise of this essentially godlike figure. So there's a lot going on in there. There's a lot, and the more you read of it, the more you can read into it. But they're really well realised and still stand up really well today. So I like the books. Worst case, if you really want to take the short-handed route, there is the Lynch movie. Now, at the moment, this is the best I can offer you. There is the Denis Villeneuve is the guy who did Blade Runner 2049, I think it was, is bringing out the Dune, his version of Dune, which is coming out later in the year. For the time being, if you're going to dip into something, at least you give you a flavour of that universal world. You can't go actually too far wrong with David Lynch's Dune from the 80s. Aesthetically, it's gorgeous. Production design, set design, all of it is stunningly well realised. It really does look brilliant. Like some kind of steampunky and sort of medieval. It's an aesthetic of its own, and it was pretty cool. To capture the story of Dune and the nuances of that, it doesn't do such a good job. It was hacked to a point to death when it first came out, abbreviated down and fudged around to try and get some legible storyline out of it. On the whole, 2/3 of the movie it's pretty close to the original novel. It does kind of go off a little bit on the tangent towards the end, but yeah, if you want to at least get yourself sort of a vague bedding into the world, the universe, then you can not go too far wrong the movie. It's definitely a curio. Anyway, all of that aside, as I say, all that will definitely put much more stake in how much you enjoy these two bad boys. Theme, as we've discussed at length, or I certainly have discussed at length, theme, which one of these two captures the theme best? Taking the 1970s Dune, this is a thing very much, the theme just kind of drips through it. It's all over it. The mechanisms are tied into the theme. It is you're doing stuff that makes sense thematically in the world of Dune. It has that houses battling each other. It has that kind of a macro scale of game that you're fighting. It's dudes on a map essentially. You're fighting over the planet Arrakis for the various different houses. You all have different game-breaking abilities, ways of betrayal and battles, and all of the good Dune-y stuff is in there, and it does a very good job of kind of taking that, just the broad idea of the Dune universe and the story, and allowing you to play your own kind of alternate version of it. It doesn't follow specifically plot lines, but there is all the nuances and flavour of it in there. And it does very good. If you've read those books, if you've seen even the movie, there's a lot to enjoy in that, because you'll get a lot more out of it, because the theme is just dolloped all over the place, and it's lovely. I love it. I like what made it so great, and I've covered this before, is this was rethemed into Rex in the Twilight Imperium universe, and it didn't quite work as well, because it just didn't. So yes, Dune. So theme for Dune, the 1970s GF9 reprint. Brilliant. Love it in it. Love it in the old theme. Dune Imperium. So the theming of Dune Imperium. At first glance, it didn't feel as thematic for me. The whole thing is kind of abstracted anyway. You're dealing with this board, which is less a planet. It's this kind of abstracted different areas and parts of the Dune universe and the worlds and the houses and all sorts. It's there, very abstracted out. The planet's kind of there, and the abstracted battles. So at first, initially, no. But the more you play it, and especially again how invested you are in the Dune universe and the later stories of Dune, then the more mileage you're going to get out of this, because there is stuff in there that it is all there, just maybe not as smoothly thematically linked in as that is, but it's there. There's the houses, there's the things, there's the characters, the effects of the different factions, how they all work together, how the actions in certain areas of the board can affect that as well. The battles are also there, so it's all still there, just kind of micro. Almost, yeah, this is a macro, this is micro, this is kind of abbreviated micro style. You've got more interactions between the characters in that you're building these decks, and the small skirmishes and fights for little battles on the planet is all kind of there. As I say, abstracted. So that's more, yeah, that. So out of that, where do we come? I would sway in regards to theme that this is probably the more thematic of the two. Really easier to pick up the theme and get to it, and it pays it off nicely. Whereas Dune Imperium, it is there, it is abstracted, as I've said, and it isn't as rich unless you really put a little bit more effort in. Then maybe this is easier to mainline the theme. So gameplay, this is where we're going to diverge all over the place. So gameplay wise, Dune, GF9's Dune is dudes on a map. It's the basic ruling. You are controlling at a kind of distance troops. You're interacting as battles. You're playing cards in those battles. You're aligning how many troops you're going to send in. It's got lots of cool little mechanisms, some of which were borrowed by Civ and some other games. But yeah, you're fighting in these things. There's a fog of war almost feel to it. You have the effects of the sandstorms racing around the planet, wiping out troops and shutting off areas on the map. So it's very much a tactical. It's all about most players possible as well. Like if you can get everyone at the table, 5 at least people on the table, that interconnecting sort of interplay of everyone kind of having allegiances and betrayals and all that thick, syrupy goodness of Dune that's the gameplay of that game. It's a long game. It is a complex game. Although once you understand it and play it a couple of times as a track, it's a good, real good dudes on the map, sort of traitorous, backstabbing, asynchronous powers, all that good shit is in there. It's a shame almost that there's not a better presented version of this. This is fine, and it's a really good entry point now. You can buy this for 30 odd quid, and it's a fine edition of the game. It's just a shame it's not a really gorgeous edition. So yes, there's that. Now gameplay. Dune Imperium's gameplay is a different beast. We are looking at this hybrid game, and as I'm mentioning it, there's also Lost Ruins of Arnak that came out similar time, very similar sort of design process. This is deck building, this is worker placement, but it has this hybrid moments of it. So not only you're using your deck building cards, but in 2 different ways. You have 2 rounds, so you can use them either for the abilities on the cards in the first round, by placing your meeples, play them out, give you a place to take, and you can do that, and sometimes give you powers, or you hold off or bank some in later on to be able to use this for influence and maybe other abilities as well at the bottom, so you use in fights and stuff to buy more cards into your deck. and those cards. So you start with a base hand of 10 basic cards. Everyone starts with that, but that sort of slow tweaking and some of these higher powered cards. So that's an interesting tactic. There's a lot of meat flying around there. So you've got that, the two routes there, but also amongst that, which makes this kind of cool, is you've got this battle mechanism. And what happens is every round, at the end of every round, after everyone's taken all their actions and spent their cards and bought the cards and all that, there is a battle takes place on the board, which is kind of this abstracted version of skirmishes that are taking place on the planet Dune, or maybe in the universe or wherever, just this general sort of power play between these forces that you've had to send troops into during the game. You can again buff this with intrigue cards and other cards, so touch back to this sort of traitory, backstabbery stuff going on. So there's a kind of, again, that fog of war. No one quite knows what's going on. What you do know is what you're fighting over, and some of the battles are much more rewarding than others. And you could almost find yourself drawn into fights over stuff that maybe you're kind of pushing too many troops in for that, to grab that, when really later on there may be something better. So there's a lot of tactics to that. There's a lot of meat going on in this mix and mash of stuff. And I've played a good few games of this now, and I don't think we've really touched on what depths this has got. It's got a lot more going on than at first sight. Throw in a solo mode into Dune Imperium, which actually works quite well, and uses a app to do that, and or deck of cards out of the box, but the app actually works better. And Simon, they brought the other little quality of life things with the other app stuff for the bigger player games. Only plays 4. It's another thing to bear in mind. But this can't be played solo. It can't be played. It pretty much functions at its best at 4 or more. You can play 4-player games of this, and I have, and it works pretty well. But the higher counts really allow this to blossom. Whereas this is max of 4, can be played with 1 player, and does give you a lot of the feel of what this is doing in that backstabbery, traitory, Junie type dollopy good fun. Graphic design, components, stuff. So, Dune, this is a solid version of it. It is taking the aesthetics of the 1970s version on board, and it kind of has updated them. It doesn't look as polished as maybe some other stuff, but I quite like that. It's got that non-polished thing. It becomes very functional and works very well. And it's kind of got a stylized look to it. Components-wise, I mean, you're talking a lot of cardboard chits and stuff, so it's okay. The card quality is okay. The cardboard components are okay. Everything's there. The rulebook's fairly good and functional for what it is. So it kind of comes in on it's okay. It's not War of the Rings second edition director's cut. I was going to say it's not a Simon production. It's not a Corminia Knot thing. It's blistering of plastic and it's blinged up to his high horse. They did release some cut plasticky bits you could have got on the pre-order, which I've not got, and I don't think it would have made a massive difference to my life. I think you can now pick them up separately. But yeah, so it's okay. It's not earth-shattering. Could have done better, but it's perfectly functional and fine. It's okay. Components-wise in this, again, we kind of find ourselves down on the middling thing. However, there's, again, caveats to be good. So this game in the box is pretty good stuff. All the art and design is based off of the forthcoming movie. So there's painted art of them. It's not the greatest painted art. FFG's is certainly, if you look at FFG Star Wars, that's some of those illustrations and the cards and stuff, compared to the stuff on this isn't as hot. It looks okay. It's not offending to my eye, and it's not Firefly, the legendary game, bad. It's okay. It's kind of lacks any real style to it, if anything, really. It's kind of a bit of that. But what to know that, again, it's functional. It's very functional in regards to that. It's not doing anything astounding. And again, we're kind of in the realms of this muddy, grey, yellowy kind of colour scheme. At least it's a bit more on the cards than the meeples. The meeples, wood and all that is all kind of functional again and fine. The card stock is okay. It's not astounding. I think I've sleeved mine because I thought it would see a lot of use. Rulebook's pretty good. There's the app thing and all that. And it's all, again, it's kind of a safe sort of, yeah, it's okay. What will probably perk this up depending on your mileage on this, and also depending if you can get it, is they have announced when this came out initially was a box of bablinging that you could buy for this, which will replace all the wooden counters for plastic miniatures. The armies, all the wooden components will be blinged up with nice plastic stuff. And that's pretty much what is in there, just general bit of blinging of all the stuff in there, which would then scale that up to the next level. So as we stand at the moment, these base versions, and for you not having to spank 50 quid to get the plastic to make that look nicer if it comes out in the UK, I think this one takes it in regards to it's just got a bit more character, a bit more nuance to it. It's got a bit more style to it rather than this. I like it. It's functional. It hasn't put me off, but it also doesn't kind of drag you too much into the theme of what it is. Perhaps once the movie's out, and obviously the characters that are in here are out the movie, maybe it might mesh a bit better, but I'm kind of grabbing at straws on that one. Dune. Where I come down on it is, at the moment, I'm very split down the middle because they do so many different things. So I recommend them both. And it really comes down to what you're coming into at. Do you like Dune? Did you just watch the movie? Have you read the books? If you've read the books and you're very invested in it, you're probably going to get a lot more out of that if you can get enough people together to play it, and if they enjoy it, and if you can teach them it and play it a few times before it actually starts to sing. However, this gives you a lot of that experience, but it gives you in a much easier to teach, much more simplified rule set, some interesting, innovative, hybrided game mechanisms going on, and it does still give the theme. If you've read the books, you'll get a lot more out of it to a point. Yes, you will. And the movie, no doubt, when it returns and comes out, will also give this a little bit more mileage. And if you really dig it and you're really loving it, you can of course throw the plastic bling in it later on. So there you go. It really comes down to how often do you play, how many players you're going to get. If it's a smaller, lower count, then all day long. If you're the type of peeps that love a big, broad sort of Twilight Imperium 4, the big sort of dudes on the map game, like all that sort of Games of Throne backstabbing and all that shenanigans, and there's a big bunch of you and you're willing to invest the time in it, and it will take time, then that. And they both are pretty good. To be fair, looking around, you can probably get both these bad boys for less than the price of the TI4, and you're kind of getting the TI4 experience, but spread over different games, different nights. But you should still buy TI4. So there you go. There is our comparison piece, my comparison piece between Dune. I think we've come to a resounding solid cemented answer on that one. I like them both. I think they're really cool. They do their own thing. It does it very well, and it means I get 2 games of Dune at the moment I can play, and I can play different types of evenings, different types of games, and I'm a happy puppy, or sandworm. And to think, Ignacy, our buddy from Porto, is currently in the process of working on a Dune game that uses the detective mechanism of storytelling and all that sort of stuff in the Dune universe. So we've got a 3rd game coming at some point, just to confuse things even more. Excellent. Right then, I've been Mike B. This has been Who Dares Rolls. This has been our kind of comparison piece between the 2 Dune games. Thank you, James. Recommendation. Keep it coming. I'll be back soon. I will probably do a review of this at some point, actually. Once I get a couple more games in. And some other stuff. Anyway, we'll be back soon with some more stuff, reviews, bits and pieces, nonsense, gibberish, all of that good stuff. Any suggestions? This is a two-way street. Let us know. Subscribe, share, like, portray us. Oh yes. Anyway, that's enough of that. Thanks for tuning in. I've been Mike B. This has been Who Dares Rolls. We'll be back again soon at some point. Cheers.